Welcome to the Ville Church podcast. We're so glad you're here. You're about to hear an inspirational message from our team. It is our hope this encourages you and adds value to your life as you walk with Jesus.
We're very glad that you are here today. I am not Pastor Max. I am the shorter, I was going to say other half look alike, but I don't really look anything like him. So he's bald and I'm not. He's a dude and I'm not. But we just want to say we're very glad that you are here. My name is Pastor Keshia, and I'm going to be opening up our first message, actually, of 2023. We had a New Year's Eve service on Saturday, the 31st, as we closed out 2022. So this is our first service of 2023, and I get the privilege of starting with you today. So we're going to talk about growing together. Everyone say grow together. Our vision here at the Ville Church, our mission statement is just three things: know, grow, and sow. And we talked a lot throughout the fall as we launched in September about knowing God, the importance of giving your heart to God and just starting that life-giving relationship with Jesus Christ. Church growth, part 2, grow, is what we're excited about. Church growth is a good thing. And not because it makes us as pastors look like we're good at what we do or like we're just like crushing it, or and not because it makes us look like, we've made the right decisions. Church growth is good because what it symbolizes. Church growth symbolizes families, souls, men, women, and children coming in to the church and hopefully giving their hearts to the Lord, serving the Lord for generations to come. We had a baptism service a little over a month ago, and it was a wonderful time where we got to baptize people who made the decision that as for them and their house, they were going to serve the Lord. So church growth is not the enemy, but there's this kind of hesitation or struggle when we talk about the church growing. And we absolutely plan on the church growing because I want to bring as many people into the kingdom of heaven when I get there one day as I possibly can. I hope you do too. But there's this predicament that churches get into as that church begins to grow. You see, when a church grows and becomes a larger sized church, it becomes much, much easier to not feel like you're known and to not feel like you have relationship or connection with people. And that can be hard. And I've met very few people, but I have met people in my life that they want that. They want to be able to slip in and slip out and nobody talk to me, okay? And more power to you, although I hope today you see why that might not be super healthy throughout our message. But very few people are like that. The majority of people over our years, 10 plus years as pastors, that I have seen and talked with, they want connection. They want to be known. They want to know that the leadership knows their name, that somebody knows their situation, that they have somebody they can go to and say, can you pray for me? I'm struggling with this. That they have an uplifting body of people supporting them. And so we definitely see a biblical standard for church growth. The church should grow. But as the church grows larger in numbers, we have to be intentional about growing smaller as well by making and cultivating opportunities for small group engagement, for you to have a Bible study or a group on something that you're interested in, or go out with a group of friends that you've made at church and build relationships so that you're not just a face, you're not just a number. Relationships are so important, and that's why growing together is the second part of our vision here at the Ville Church. Not just growing, but we want to grow together and know each other and build those deep relationships. So growing together means you have to depend on other people. You have to put yourself out there a little bit. And I know if you have a personality maybe similar to me, that's kind of like, ooh, not very good at that. I have a 3-year-old. Anyone here have toddlers? Right now, toddlers, okay? A lot of you have toddlers right now. Hey, guys. Okay. Anyone here raised a toddler? Okay. A lot more of us raised a toddler. Okay. So you all know what I'm talking about. And if you're a kid, you're like, I've seen toddlers. So there's this thing that happens with toddlers. We have one that's out of that stage and one that's currently in it. But Macelyn, our 3-year-old, she's in this stage of independence. Independence is a good thing, a very good thing. You want your kids to be independent. I mean, nobody that I know of gives birth to a child and actively plans to still wipe their bottom for them at 15, 16, 17. Like, it happens, but nobody actively plans for that to happen. The goal of raising a child is for them to be independent. Feed yourself, go to the restroom, do things. But the process of independence will drive you mad. Because while they want to do everything, this is where we're at now. I can do it myself. I want to do it myself. While she can do it herself, what I could do for her in half a second, she can do in half a day. And so I struggle because I'm like, I live on a fast-paced timeline. We got to get to school. I got to get you up in the morning. We got to move. And her biggest thing right now is the truck. So we have a truck that has like 2 steps to get up into it. Well, like a step and then you're in the truck. Okay. So getting into this truck, I could do it myself. And I'm like, just let me lift you up, please. Just let me. She's like, I could do it myself. She's like, and I'm like, oh, okay, I want you to be independent. One day I'm going to be so glad you can get in the truck yourself, but get in the truck. And she's like, oh, I got it. And I try to help her. No, I can do it myself. Okay. She gets in the truck. She gets in the seat. It's been 10 minutes. I'm like, okay, let me buckle you in. We got to go real quick. No, I can buckle myself. And I'm like, no. Yeah. She takes little buckles because we're still in the big giant car seat. She goes, no, you see that one is turned the wrong way and it's never going to work even if they connect. And I'm like, no. Oh. So you understand, you have a concept. If you've ever worked with a toddler, that idea of everything that happens, I can do myself. And I have to remind myself, this too shall pass. She will eventually get faster and faster and faster about these things. But everything she does at this stage, she wants to do by herself. And independence is a good thing. But just because independence is a good thing, it does not mean that interdependence is not also a good thing. We were not created to live in isolation. We were not created to live by ourselves without the relationships and assistance and connections we make with other people. Growing together means that as we grow larger, we also have to stay small and be intentional about staying small in different ways, creating opportunities for small group engagement. And that's why we are so excited here at the Ville Church to say, now that we've launched in September and God has brought growth, we're going to create some small group opportunities starting in February. Keep your ears out. We're going to talk about connection all through January. And starting in February, we're going to have small group opportunities where you can get to know people more than just a Sunday morning. You come in, we worship, we hear God's word, and then we leave. But a time where you can get to know more intentionally and maybe more intimately people that are attending here at the Ville. We need faith-based relationships. We need community. Actually, Max and I were talking about this opening message, and he's like really good at those one-liners, and he thinks he's so clever. And so he was like, hey, you should say in your message Sunday, you should say, you can't you can't spell community without you and I. And I was like, well, I'll say it, but I'm going to make fun of you while I say it. So there you go. Here's my one-liner for the day. From Pastor Max, you can't spell community without you and I. Okay. The need for community, that interdependence, actually goes all the way back to Genesis. In fact, if you remember the story in Genesis 2 when God formed mankind, Adam, it says he formed him from the dust of the ground and he breathed the breath of life into him. He placed him in the Garden of Eden, and then Genesis 2:18, God said, it's not good for man to be alone. I will make a helper suitable for him. And he created Eve. Now, obviously, I like a little bit of humor. Did you realize, because when I was studying this particular passage, I realized this for the very first time. Right before he made woman, right before he created Eve in the garden, he brought, and I didn't realize it happened before he created woman, he brought the animals, it says, to Adam and gave him the responsibility of naming the animals. And then he fell into a deep sleep and he created Eve. So the next time, this is why it's funny, the next time you have trouble saying or spelling hippopotamus, or the next time you wonder why we named a frog a mountain chicken, man named animal before woman came to be, okay? So I'm just saying, it's in the Bible, and if it's in the Bible, it's true. Before Eve was created, animals were named, so you can blame them for that one. Ecclesiastes 4:9-12 tells us also this: 2 are better than 1, because they have a good return for their labor. If either falls down, one can help the other up. But pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them up. If 2 lie down together, they will keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? Though one may be overpowered, 2 can defend themselves. And a cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. Multiple scriptures I could bring to you today from God's word remind us of the dangers of isolating ourselves from other people. You know, we're just like preparing for a party today, you know, with these lights. I love it. That's one of my favorite things about church planning and learning all kinds of equipment is you never know what's going to happen. So praise God. Every time it goes dark, I'm going to go. And then when it comes back on, I might not dance because that'd be awkward. Okay. We're warned about the dangers of isolation. Isolation, let's talk about it for just a minute. You know, a few months ago, we were walking through a sermon series on the choice, talking about choosing the tree of life over the tree of the knowledge of good and evil and separating ourselves from God. Isolation is that first step that leads us down a path to destruction. And we talked about, think about a teenager. I have never raised a teenager, but I have been a teenager. And I know in moments as a teenager when I was making choices that my parents would not have been okay with, when I was making choices that were tearing me from God, my first thing I did was close myself off. I would, stay in my room. I would isolate from people that I loved. I wouldn't go out and make connections with people I knew would call me out on those things. And I did that as a teenager, and I see it all the time. Isolation typically happens when there's guilt and there's shame present. Something I'm doing, I feel like, would not be acceptable by someone or approved, or if you really knew me, then would you still care for me the way that you say you care for me? And so I made choices as a teenager to isolate, and we see this even as adults, that isolation is so dangerous. It pulls us away from God, and it pulls us away from godly people. Actually, it's one of the key characteristics of depression. is isolating from people around you. I don't want to talk to anyone. I don't want to be around anyone. Depression's characterized by that emotional heaviness, fatigue, lack of interest in things that you once had a passion for. But isolation is one of those major signals that something is going on. So there are scriptural benefits to maintaining godly relationships. Life change happens in the context of relationship. Life change can happen in the context of relationships with the people around us. So let's talk about those. I have just two for you today. Growing together, what does it do? Well, first, growing together, being intentional about forming godly relationships with people absolutely sharpens our faith. So number one, it can sharpen our faith. You can buy the most expensive, that knife set off of the TV show where the guy talks really loud and really fast and he shows you how it slices a tomato in a quarter of a second. You can buy that knife set, but eventually, after using those knives, no matter how expensive they were or how fancy they were, what are you going to have to do with those knives? You're going to have to sharpen them, of course. Because the more they're used, the propensity to get dull happens. You have to keep them sharp for them to continue to be effective. And we are no different as people. In our relationship with God, we need to stay sharpened. We stay sharpened as we engage with God's word, as we make a commitment to read his word daily, remind ourselves of his truths. And then we stay sharp by surrounding ourselves with people who will call us out when we're doing things that we know are pulling us away from God. When we stay in relationship with people who we can go to and say, I need prayer this week. Can you pray for this is happening in my family? We stay sharp when we're encouraging and edifying one another, when we can share a dream we have. I feel like God is leading me to do this. What do you think? And they can edify that within us, and they can pray with us over that dream. Those are things that keep us sharp. I have all kinds of examples. I won't go through any of them today. Except I'll share one in a minute, but of times where I was getting dull and God used somebody, a person, to come into my life at the exact right moment and to call out something in me that I had stopped seeing, or to pray over me and reach me even in a dark moment. Proverbs 27:17, as iron sharpens iron, so one man Kidding. I told you I was going to do it. Okay. As iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. Let's do a quick survey. So if you're in here today and you have ever had somebody speak into your life in a moment when you really needed encouragement, raise your hand. Okay. Yeah. God uses people 100%. We're going to talk in a minute about the reason why we don't always engage with people right away. But God uses people to speak into our lives. Think of the example that even Jesus set. After starting his ministry on earth, one of the first steps he does as he begins to teach and preach is he builds a group of people that follow him throughout his ministry, that he eats with, he shares life with. They pray together. They build that relationship, those disciples, and they're with him all the way through the end of his earthly life. They engage in activities. They speak life. He teaches them. I'm sure that those relationships were so important to him. And small groups offer us the opportunity to reach out to somebody when we are at our worst and when we're at our best and share life together. When we're struggling and we have no connection, we struggle in isolation. But when we're struggling and we have connections, we have people that can challenge us, we can reach out to, and we can know they'll pray over and for us and that we are not alone. So I mentioned Here's the other part of it. Here's where the caution to engage in relationships comes from. Because growing together sharpens us, but it also requires vulnerability. We have to be willing to be vulnerable with people, to take those steps of growth and let people in. And when I say let people into your life, that is an automatic red flag for some people. They're like, I'm done listening. Sermon stopped at 10:44 in the morning, and I'm not going any farther. Because, and I would guess, the reason for that reaction is because relationships may have brought pain in the past. People hurt us. Somebody has let you down. Somebody you really thought you were close to betrayed you. You felt like they went against you, or they caused you emotional damage. If I have a dog that is injured and I go up to this dog and I try to help the dog, and it doesn't know what I'm thinking, but I try to help it, what's it most likely going to do? Right? Well, that was a cat. Sorry. Like, okay, there we go. There's a dog. Growl. Okay, it's going to lash out at me. Most often, right? A hurt dog is going to lash out at you if you try to help it. And you know what? People are the same way. You've heard it before. Hurting people hurt people. And not God pain, people pain is the reason why we hesitate so much when it comes to building relationships and allowing ourselves to connect to other people. Max is really good at this. I like to brag. I like to make fun of him, and I always will do that. But I also like to brag on him too. Like, he is the best people person I know. Like, you feel like you talk to him in 5 minutes, and like he's your best friend in the world, and he's really, really good and solid at that. And I am not. We often joke, I can be outgoing, but when it comes to making deep relationships, I struggle with it. We often laugh about how we even got together in the first place because I'm not good at letting people in. I'm not good at that. It doesn't come naturally for me. Opening up and going deep brings pain, and I naturally see that, and I like to keep pain away, as far away as I possibly can. And when I think back through my life of some of the deepest relationships I've formed outside of my husband, I think about, there's like 3 people I can think of for my whole life that I have a deep and close relationships that I would say like they really like know me. And one in particular, actually all 3 are Max's fault. He's the one who made them be my friend. I'm saying that in a joking way. But actually, there was a principal that I worked with at a school. I was a school counselor, and she was my boss. And I kept telling Max, I just started at this school, and I kept telling Max, she is a woman of faith. She is a godly woman. I really respect her. She is funny, and like she's not drama, because I don't do drama. Another struggle with my 3-year-old girl, let me tell you, is I don't do drama. Keep crying, okay? See where it gets you. I was just like, Max, I really admire her, and I really think that, I could be good friends with her. But of course, I didn't actively take any steps to make that happen. And then one day, out of nowhere, a couple months into working at that school, she texted me and she said, hey, do you want to go get dinner some night this week and go hang out? And I was like, yes, I would love to. I'm like, Max, is that okay? Which you'll know why asking him was funny. Now, in a few minutes, I'll tell you why it's funny. But I said, Max, is that okay? Can I go out and get dinner and go out this night? And we had a newborn baby. I was like, please, you got the baby. I promise you can do this. Please let me. And he was like, yes, absolutely. Go. Have a blast. Have fun. He was so supportive. So I went out and had dinner, and that was just the beginning of just still lifelong friendship. We just visited Missouri, and I went out, and I made a point that I wanted to spend time with her. We communicate very often, and she's just a wonderful, godly friend that I can go to for prayer. She comes to me for prayer. I can talk to when I'm struggling with different things emotionally. And it was only actually later, after I pieced together pieces of our conversation from that night, and I really started to think, because I live in my head a lot, I was like, Max, you were a little too unsurprised that she asked me to go to dinner. And she made a couple comments while we were out that answer these for me. And he was like, okay, I asked her to ask you out to dinner. He's like, I messaged her and I asked her to message you because I just knew you weren't going to do it. And I'm like, that's so embarrassing. I'm an adult. And now I'm forever grateful. Forever grateful. We have a really great friendship. And like I said, that's why it was not surprising that he was like, oh, absolutely. You should go. You should do it. But he definitely is my champion. And he forces friendships on me. Just kidding. That was a good thing. So that relationship, the point of that was it was a really solid, good relationship that I still cherish to this day and that we're still connected. So can relationships with people bring pain? Absolutely. I've been hurt many, many times by just sometimes even just not even intentional hurt, but just the thoughtlessness of people that I've had relationships with or I thought were close to me. But if we expect perfection from people, we will be disappointed every single time. Every single time. If we expect humans to not let us down, I guarantee you this, you will be disappointed. Someone is going to forget to message you on your big day. Someone is going to be unable to come and visit you that you thought surely would be there when you're in the hospital, but they just don't make it. Somebody, is going to open your message asking you to pray for them, and then all of a sudden, they're going to be like, oh, something happened, and then they're going to forget to respond to that message. People are imperfect. But relationships, while yes, times they bring us pain, they also can bring some of the greatest healing in our life. Because just like somebody might forget, you never know when you're going to make that connection with somebody who's going to be a lifelong godly influence in your life, that in a time when you felt like isolating and just giving up, even on giving up on God, they're going to grab you by the collar and say, you're coming with me. We're praying over this. I'm praying for you, and I'm going to walk with you through this darkness that you are going through. They'll remind you you're not alone in this world and that God cares about you and that God sees you. And that is everything. And there are people who care about you and see you too. Isolation leads to destructive choices. When we pull away from people, it leads to destructive choices. We see that all throughout Scripture. Eve did not consult with Adam when she was tempted and Satan came to her in the garden and tempted her to doubt God and to take from the fruit. She didn't say, Adam, what do you think? She thought, oh, this sounds good. And she did it and then turned and offered it to her husband. But she didn't talk to somebody first. David, actually, I was just in worship. God reminded me of this story. In 2 Samuel chapter 11, it specifically says that when David, this man of God, fell into sin with someone else's wife, what happened? It didn't happen when he was surrounded by his army, did it? It happened when the kings went off to war and David stayed home alone. He wasn't where he was supposed to be. He stayed isolated and pulled away and alone. And that's when he made that fatal choice that absolutely marked his life. And that he spent years working through emotionally, God restoring him because of the sin that he had committed. It was because he was isolated. And when did Satan come to Jesus and tempt Jesus? When he was surrounded by his disciples and the people that were following him in ministry? When he was alone. Fasting and praying in the wilderness is when Satan took that opportunity to come in and to say, you should do this. Now, Jesus did not give in to that temptation, but Satan saw the opportunity when he was alone. Isolation, we need times of not being around people, of course. But when you see a pattern of isolation in your life and no connections, that should be an immediate red flag to you. That I've got to be intentional about building godly connections. The greatest commandment in Matthew 22, when he was asked by an expert of the law, what is the greatest commandment? Jesus says, to love the Lord your God first with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. So love God and love people. Love God and love people. And connection, growing together is all about loving people in their pretty and in their ugly. Because we all have pretty and we all have ugly. It's about loving people. I asked a bunch of leaders this week kind of what they thought of when I said grow together. When you think of growing together and making connections with people, what does that bring to your mind? And that idea of community, and here's what they said. They said having someone to reach out to when you need prayer, knowing you're known and cared for, having someone who checks on you and makes you realize people do know my name. People do care about me. Having people you look forward to seeing when you walk in the door, like, you're here. You know, my 3-year-old, the dramatic one that is highly independent, she's the best church greeter ever. If you ever see her, she comes up to everybody. And she goes, when they walk in on Sunday mornings, if she's downstairs, she goes, "It's you! I'm so glad you're here." And I'm like, yes, she's getting it. She's doing great. She doesn't know your name, but it's you. I'm so glad. It's super cute. But know people that you look forward to seeing their faces when you come to church on a Sunday morning, and learning from people who are in different life stages than you're in. You know, whether you're, that's especially valuable. Maybe you're single. Maybe you're married. Maybe you have children, no children. You're wealthy or you struggle to make ends meet. Maybe your hair is blonde or antique blonde. Okay? It doesn't matter. Or you have no hair, Pastor Max. We can all learn from each other. We all have something to give, and we all need things for God to speak to us through people that we can receive. God built us for relationships. And again, I'll say this. Life change happens in the context of relationships.
Thank you for listening to the Ville Church podcast today. If you are interested in taking the first step in your relationship with Jesus by accepting the free gift of salvation, please text Jesus to 463-218-7228, and someone from the Ville Church will follow up with you. Have a great day.